Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, I want to thank you. Today we hit our 1 millionth download on our podcast, over 5 million social media impressions, and it's all because of you guys. I love you guys, and I'm going to be doing a special giveaway at the end, so make sure you stay. Guys, we're going to be talking with my friend Luke. We're going to be talking about some amazing things. If you're a business owner and you want to get a celebrity to help endorse your company, we're going to teach you. He's going to teach you how to do that. So I want to welcome my brother Luke. He's amazing CEO, CFO. You've probably seen him in Forbes. He's everywhere. He's the Swiss Army knife of PR. Luke, brother, welcome to the show.
Richard, thanks for having me on, man. Looking forward to this.
I'm awesome. And I just want to give a shout out to Krista. Big shout out. Thank you for hooking us up and get us on the show. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you so much. So, Luke, before we even get started, first question is, what is your definition of resiliency?
Resiliency is going through the tough times and doing the work that is necessary despite your emotions and despite the feelings. And yeah, it's being able to push through those barriers on an ongoing basis. I love the word resiliency.
And, since I started the show, I'm starting to see the word resilient everywhere. Every time because I guess my RAS, now I'm just listening for the word resilience, and it's always popping up everywhere. So, but I think it's very important, especially in business, because in 98, people had to be resilient, and then when COVID hit in 20, you had to be resilient. And I think now as we're coming out of COVID, we got to be even more resilient. So I think resilience is a big thing. Now, let me ask you a question before we get started. Tell us a little bit about where you came from, where did you grow up, and how did you become the force that you are today?
For sure. I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. If anybody knows it, home of the Winnipeg Jets hockey team, if you know that.
Yep. I was just about to say that.
I grew up in an interesting dynamic where both of my parents gave me and my brothers a lot of love and a lot of care, which is needed for children, but they went through a very messy divorce. And for a period of time, I was living with my mom, and she kind of had so-called custody over us when we were kids. And I think men need their mother and father figure in their lives when they're growing up for various reasons, and different reasons for both parental figures in their life. And so when I was with my mom and my brothers were with my mom, we lacked the obedience that was needed from the father figure. And then my dad got full custody, and we lived with our dad and without our mom for the rest of my childhood. And what came from that is we became very disciplined. We built our character. We didn't stray away. We built up like pretty good values and morals, but we missed the qualities of what a mother brings to the childhood, which is kind of like the emotional bandwidth. And it's definitely caused an immense amount of problems in my life, like reflecting back and bringing it into it. But I think the dynamic really crafted us into a very unique human being, myself and my brothers, where we had love and care. So we weren't like abandoned, but we also were going through extremely tough times at a very young age, which built up the resilience, the grit that when you handle that type of situation younger in age, I think that it makes situations that you get into older in age much easier. And so I felt that when I got into business, I think that very difficult situations and huge stress factors I could still feel, but I was able to get through them easier because I had the perspective of previously the immense amount of trauma that I went through. And I think every single business owner goes through that at some point, whether it was in their childhood or at some point in their business career where they lose everything and they have to have that resilience in order to get through it and not quit. And so
All
that
right, so
that
then
was my
let me, I want to go back a little bit because I always like asking this people because like we were talking about before we came on the show, whether you're the CEO, whether you're the janitor, we all go through the same shit. But for men, it's like for this show, we can open up and talk about it. So, I grew up as an abused child, and my solace, my go-to was reading. I love to read, and I still have 18 books going at any time. So, what was your solace when you were, because like you said, if you grew up with trauma, we usually go to find something. Either it's music, books, learning, partying, drugs, alcohol. What was your solace? What was your go-to?
yeah, I've actually never been asked that question, so thank you for asking it. Um, my solace was isolation, unfortunately. I kept to myself and I was extremely quiet and I felt like that nobody listened to me. And I think that's gone into my mission and my purpose where a lot of what I do today is wanting to have influence so that I can showcase what my values are into this world and have actual influence so that people listen to me. And I think that's a huge thing that I carried into the business where um, I, I find when people listen to you, it's a huge form of respect. And so that's why I strive for inside my organization is that I'm trying to constantly gain, keep, and grow the respect that I have amongst my team. And now we have a big enough team where I'm trying to teach the leaders that are under me and teach the head managers that are under me how to gain that same respect. And it's actually been quite fulfilling in the business journey side of things. I'm still going through it on the personal side of things, and nowhere am I even close to uh, the end of the journey. Um,
Okay.
but
So,
yeah,
let's,
yeah,
what was your first foray into business and into entrepreneurship?
I thought I originally thought that I didn't get into entrepreneurship until I started up our first business, which was grade 11 of high school, going into grade 11 of high school. But I realized that I actually had entrepreneurial tendencies throughout my entire life, and I didn't really realize it. And it actually started in kindergarten, where my younger brother was extremely into Pokemon cards. And so my mom would buy him a ton of Pokemon cards. And I would see the opportunity of taking those Pokemon cards and bringing them into my kindergarten classroom and basically selling them to my kindergarten classmates and doing trading of Pokemon cards. And so I never thought that as an entrepreneurial thing until I reflected back on it. And then the next entrepreneurial thing was in middle school and early high school. I was trying to make some extra money on the side. And I went on to Kijiji, which is basically like the Craigslist of Canada. And I bought and sold bicycles and TVs with my brother because I was able to just understand the microeconomics of buying low and then just selling a bit higher, finding a deal and figuring out a way to like find lower priced items and then being able to maybe fix up the bike and then sell it. And so I did that, and then it got me into the first business, which was Heike, what it is today, and started that up in going into grade 11.
Okay, so now like we were talking about, and by the way, I've been following you, I've been stalking you, and I love everything that you're doing. So I just want to let you know that. But
Thank
something
you.
that me and you, we both grew up from very, very humble beginnings. And we realized that we don't want to be that way anymore. Because one thing, and thanks to Tony Robbins, he changed my mindset is, when we're kids and we come from poor households, we're always taught that, we're always said, well, we can't afford it, or we can't buy this. And then because I had the authors of Rich Dad Poor Dad come on, and when I read their books, it changed my mindset into saying, instead of saying I can't afford it, to say how can we afford it. And so it was a big switch as far as the mindset towards money goes. So what was that like? And do you remember when the switch happened, or were you always like that?
Yeah, so that kind of conversation, and I love it. It gets into like the abundance mindset of just thinking of money very abundantly. And I think when you have a relationship with money of extreme abundance, it flows more easily to you, because when you feel very restricted with your money, then you tend to not take as big of risks with your money, and then you ultimately won't get the returns that you're desiring. Um, I think that my relationship on money, it grew into abundance, but it definitely didn't start there. I think I actually had a very poor relationship with money at the beginning, and it somehow played a good role. And I'll give you insight into it. Basically, in grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, and grade 10, I worked extremely hard on side jobs, basically minimum wage, maybe 15-hour dollar per hour jobs, painting, doing demolition work for one of my friends' father's company, like kind of illegal work because I was 15 at the time, and then doing all of these things just to grow up my savings. And then in grade 10, I used all of my savings and gambled it on sports betting. I had about like $8,000 because I basically got addicted to gambling in high school. And I think I have a fairly addictive personality. And in a really messed up way, what it taught me was that money can just flow extremely easily. And it made me not fearful of losing money. And so what I took into business was I was able to take extremely big risks. And that's like all my business career has been, is like taking extremely big risks. Like when we started up our first business in grade 11, I took my remaining $6,000 of savings that I grew up all the way from since grade 7, and threw it all into the business for creating our first batch of products that we ended up selling. And so I think that was a huge component that developed into abundance once I was able to become more independent, get enough money to be able to move out and just live on my own.
Okay, so let's talk about that, because a lot of people, take it for instance, a lot of people will say, I'm too old to start a business,
Mhm.
or I'm too young to start a business. So, but I think no matter what age you are, because I mean, even, Colonel Sanders was like 65 before he even started KFC. And then you have people, like Gary Vee started selling baseball cards at the age of 12 in school. So I think that entrepreneurship should be taught more, especially nowadays, because it used to be I would be able to go work for a company for 20 years, get a gold watch, and retire. That's not the way of the world anymore. So, what are your thoughts about getting the youth into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I'll speak on both sides of things in terms of people who say that I'm too young for entrepreneurship and people who say that I'm too old for entrepreneurship. The younger generation is the best time to be trying new things and dabbling into the entrepreneur space, potentially starting up a business, or at least like starting up something that they can cultivate their skills in the real world, compared to high school and university where it's all theoretical and they're not building like extreme real world skill sets if they're in like the business side of things. And my main thing is the mindset that got me to push so hard and be so dedicated at such a young age is, I thought to myself, on the grand scheme of life over the long term, that this is the point in time where I have the least amount of responsibility in my life and I have the most amount of freedom. And responsibility and freedom are inversely proportional with one another. And so I saw that I could take the biggest risks and the biggest bets right now, not go to university, and I could miserably fail over the next 4, 5, even 6, maybe even 8 years. And as long as I learned more in the real world, developed my skill sets in the real world compared to going to business school and university, then I succeeded. And so it put a very like low threshold where it was an obvious choice to just go all in, because originally I was just going all in on the fact of just wanting to learn skill sets and hone in on my skill sets in comparison to like wanting to achieve these massive goals and succeed. Now, on the other side of an older generation, it's hard for me to speak to like an older generation getting into business because I don't have I'm 24 right now, and so I don't have that perspective of that. But the main thing that I would say is I had a revelation that I think a huge part of life is living to your truth. And I think that we're wired in a way where every single person is wired in a way where we're so intelligent human beings, like just the way we're designed. And if you just are able to listen to yourself in every area of your life, and I've felt culprit to this in so many different areas of not listening to myself in my relationships, not listening to myself in business moves that need to be done, and not listening to myself of things that need to get done. And whenever I don't listen to myself, I end up getting into an extreme amount of pain. And I think if somebody's listening to this podcast or this live stream and they're thinking, maybe they're in the older generation and they're scared to take the leap of faith into business because they have something comfortable, it's like, what are you living your life for? It's like, look at the grand scheme of things. Like, there's one constant that's going to happen with every single person in life, and it's that you're going to die. And so,
Hmm.
do you want to be living the rest of your life taking that safe route, that safe option, and end it with you not living your truth out? And I think that's what a huge goal of mine that I'm going to try and do for the rest of my life is just living to my truth and listening to myself.
I love it. So before we get any further, I want to say thank you to our sponsors, as you see down below. Um, my father came over to boat off the boat from Italy, didn't speak the language, but when he came to America, he said he wanted to find a good lawyer, a good accountant, and a good mechanic. He said if you have those three things, you're doing pretty good. So my cousins down below, ENA's Friendly Service, the best service station in New Jersey. If you got trucks, cars, and they're not cheap, but if you want the job done right the first time and the only time, check them out. Ask for Andrea and Ernie. Love them. Love you, cuz. So now let me ask you a question because we're going to dig deep now. Somebody would say, okay, you're 24 years old. You got 70 team members. And a lot of people would say, well, that's impossible. Just like somebody said to me at one time, why do you think that you could be one of the top podcasts in the world? And I think now we're on like the top 0.5% with over 1 million
Let's
downloads.
go.
Or I'm only a ninth grade dropout, but nobody ever said, well, you're never going to be able to write a 2-time best-selling book. So sometimes I think the people that are around you are the ones that really affect whether you're going to fly high or whether you're going to go low. And I think sometimes somebody will say, you know what, maybe you really shouldn't start that business. Let's play it safe. And then you're like, yeah, I get it. And then you never go into your greatness. So if you would have never started your business because of everybody around you, you would never have the success you have and be able to help 70 families that you're helping right now, right?
It's so true, and it was so interesting that when we first started up our business, we were posting very actually cringy content that I would say, like, when I look back on it, it was definitely, like, very cringy content in order for our marketing tactics to sell, like, our original products that we were selling back in high school. And I remember the comments that I would get from my peers, even like laughing at me, who of people who I thought were friends, and not thinking that I would go anywhere. And then once I started obtaining a certain level of success, then their mindsets completely switched. And it was super interesting seeing that and them wanting to be back part of my life when when times are good and things are successful. I'm a big advocate, very big advocate for people to leave their hometown. And I think it's because, like you said, one of the biggest components of where you're going to get to in life and success is the people that you're spending your time with. And most people have a very poor friend group that they've grown up from a very young age, and people who are keeping them tied down, especially in a small town where people have like more small town mindsets, not as abundant mindsets. They could have really good values and stuff that you could listen to them with that, but not mindsets of wanting to change the world and wanting to get to that extreme next level. And so I think that leaving your hometown is the easiest way to exit out of that very peacefully, and where you're not having to hurt anybody's feelings, and you're able to just exit the environment and create a new life for yourself where you're going to the next level. And that's what I did. I moved from Canada to Puerto Rico 3 years ago, and I think it was the best move of my entire life.
So I think since you're in Puerto Rico, you and John Lee Dumas need to get together because he lives in Puerto Rico. He lives in Puerto
Nice,
Rico.
for sure.
So, okay. So let's talk about, because I love PR. Some of my best friends, Dennis Yu, Patrick Burt, Robert Garcia. They're all SEO PR experts, and they're people I lean on heavily. I lean on you very heavily on your content, and I've been learning because you don't know what you don't know, and a lot of people, because they don't know what they don't know, they don't go any further. They just stick where they're at. And for me, like if entrepreneurs, I'm seeing that a lot of entrepreneurs or business owners, they'll see somebody that's doing a little better than them, and they'll start following them instead of following the guys that are the best at what they do. Like for me, Ed Milet, Gary Vee, Alex Hormozy, those are the top rung. So I'm watching them to see what they do and then incorporate it into what I, not bite off of them, but incorporate it into what I do. And I'm sure that when you first started out in business, I'm sure you listen to people like Dan Kennedy. You listen to these great people that have success in your niche. So talk about that when people are starting a business, that they should really dig in to your niche and follow the people that are doing it the best, not the people that are just doing a little bit better than you.
For sure, for sure. And I think it's actually very, very difficult right now. It's deceivingly difficult in terms of accessing the right information, because we live in an informational world, a knowledge-based world where information is unlimited. You have information at your fingertips on your phone, on your laptop. It's a couple clicks away on Google, YouTube for you to access any information. So it's not about the constraint of the barrier to entry of accessing the information. It's finding the right information. And it's been extremely difficult to find the right information as you scale within business, because the problems that you face become extremely more nuanced. And so you're having to find the right information in your specific niche, as well as the nuanced problems that you're facing in that specific niche. And it gets to a point of where you really just need mentors, because no content is being published specifically about your specific area. Like Alex Hormozy is posting stuff that is amazing for all business owners that any single business owner can utilize, but he's not posting stuff of my specific situation of running an 8-figure PR firm and the specific minute problems that I'm having. And so like I need to have a mentor in the space to be able to help with that. But when you're just getting started, I think that the levels that you go through is you start reading books and videos that are very generalized on business to uh, get you into that optimistic space about all of that hope that's out there of what business could achieve and the freedom that can give you. And then once you start reading business as a whole and you're ready to take the leap into business, then you want to get more nuanced and want to dive in specifically to that one area and get extremely focused. I think the number one aspect of business success is being focused on one thing at a time and not being distracted, not having shiny object syndrome, and maintain your focus on the micro level in terms of the daily activities that you're doing and on the macro level in terms of the one business that you're working on.
Yeah, and I agree. And I didn't find success until I started hiring a team, because I realized I don't know what I don't know, so I'm going to hire somebody that does know. And my coach, Mr. Joe Nicasio, he actually pulled up the list that I'm on the podcast list, and here's my name with Gary Vaynerchuk on the same, within 20 to 30 ranking. Gary Vaynerchuk, Jordan Barringer, Tim Ferriss, and then we started looking at, okay, they're sponsored by Hyundai, they're sponsored by Kia, they're sponsored by McDonald's, Burger King, and you're on the same list. Why aren't you in that list? And it kind of opened my mind to like, holy shit, I would have never thought about that because I'm in my own little space. But sometimes you need somebody to come in and say, all right, here is where you can improve. And this is what you need to do. And like I said, sometimes you have to hire a team in order to get you to the next level. Because if you're going to stay small, you can't do everything by yourself. And you got a 70-person team. So talk to us about building a good team.
Yeah, this is something I've dedicated my last 3 years in business to, is building the absolute best team possible. But I'll start from the beginning in terms of the aspect of building a team, because I think some people could get value from it. Is the mindset that I had was very not abundant at the beginning. It was the exact opposite. It was very restrictive. And so I felt like I wasn't able to hire anybody because we were just skimming by with profits. And I didn't know how to properly price our offerings so that we could have enough profit to be able to hire top level talent so that we could scale. And so I was busy doing all of the work and I didn't know how I was going to get out of that. And then when I hired people, I had this misrepresentation of what management looked like in my mind. And I hired people who weren't really good at things, like better than me at the things. They were just good enough. And so I had to train them on my capabilities. And so all of the information and all of the knowledge was coming just from myself and my brothers. And there wasn't contribution from the team who was giving insight on the things that needed to be addressed. And then I think Alex Hormozi was a point of it, watching his content and helping me like really put into words like what it is to hire A players and hire people who are actually contributing to the business, like in and of themselves, where they're bringing knowledge, information, problem solving, decisions to the table that have nothing to do with you. And I think the component of it is giving up control, giving up an aspect of control. You you lose control when you start hiring people inside of your business that are smarter than you. And that was hard for me because I felt like this business was my baby and I wanted to have control of every single decision, when I realized that once we got to a big enough point, it was the bottleneck of the business because all decisions were running through me and so much stress was on my plate because everybody was coming to me for these decisions because I didn't train the people underneath me and I didn't hire the people underneath me who had better decision-making skills than myself.
Okay, now talking about Alex, because I just had somebody that's working with Alex right now, and he has a $70 million a year company, which I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But he talks about how an Alex, if he wanted to learn, okay, I want to learn how to be the best TikToker, he'll hire somebody to somebody that's the best at their game to teach him how to be the best TikToker. And then eventually just keep him on retainer because now he's going to start implementing everything that he learned. So, but sometimes I think we're afraid to say, "Hey, Luke, bro, I need help. Can you help me? Can you show me what I'm missing?" And like for me, I got no shame in my game. If I need help, I'm going to say, "Luke, bro, I need help with this. Would you mind helping me?" And there's so many people out there that I had a friend. He's a billionaire now. He owns the largest timeshare company in Florida. And we were playing
Wow.
poker one night, and he said, "I'm like, all right, you know, tell me the secret." And he's like, and the girl came and dropped off a drink and just left, and he gave her like $5, whatever. He said, "You know what? Since I've been doing this, I've had people come look for jobs, look for loans. Nobody's ever asked me how I did it." And I think that there's so many CEOs, CFOs, entrepreneurs that if you just ask, "Hey, I need help. Would you show me?" They wouldn't mind mentoring you. Or like I had to do, my friend Russell Brunson, he told me, "Rich, people that pay attention." So that's when I had to start investing in coaches and starting investing in books and courses. But sometimes if you can't afford it, if you're humble enough, sometimes you can just go out and say, "Hey, Luke, I need help. Would you mind helping me?" And hopefully down the road, I could repay the favor. So talk about that a little bit because I think a lot of people think that, oh, I can't hire, Luke. But I'm sure if somebody came up and you said, "Luke, I need a little help. I think this could be successful. Would you mind helping?" So talk about that a little bit because a lot of people think I can't hire somebody, I can't afford it, but they don't realize that a lot of these people started out the same way you did and didn't have a mentor.
For sure. I, I think society has been in a backwards mindset. And I think it's partly the school system and university that has got people into this spending money on education, where people will so easily spend money, hundreds of thousands of dollars on post secondary education, university education, and aren't willing to spend even a fraction of that on personal development or business coaching or nuanced marketing tactics in the real world, aren't willing to put $10,000 into starting up their business, but are willing to put $200,000 into their 4 years of university education, that loan stays with them forever, even if they go bankrupt. And so I think that's a deep rooted problem in people, that they just have problems spending money on developing themselves in the real world. So that's one aspect of things. And then I think the other aspect of things is, again, we're in an infinite knowledge world right now. And so I think people are very lost in terms of the right information and the right people they should be spending that money with.
Okay, so
And
then I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to get into in terms of like what people should spend their money on at the beginning of the business. And the beginning of the business is you're really just trying to make money. And so you need to learn the basic skill sets of business, which is marketing and sales, to originally make as much money as possible. And then once you get to a certain level of business, which is actually very early on, I hired way too late. Like we were 3.5 years into business when I had my first employee. And that's way too late. And there was a mentor that came into my life and told me how you should look at hiring at the beginning. And it changed my mindset immediately. And I started hiring right after that. And it was the mindset that you need to list out every single activity that you do in your business and in your personal life. And you need to first segment all those activities into things that you don't like and then things that you like. And then you need to segment that further into the dollar per hour activity of all of those tasks. For example, cleaning, dishes, all of these things. Like, I hated doing all of those things, cleaning around the house, dishes, laundry. I didn't want to do any of that. And so I looked at my dollar per hour in my business, and I'm like, realistically, I'm probably like at about $30 per hour. And so if you look at that, you're more efficient with your time if you hire out every single dollar per hour activity underneath that $30 per hour. And that's what the mentor told me. And immediately after that, I hired basically a cleaner, somebody who did laundry, and then I also hired a meal prep company so that I didn't have to make my meals and was able to still eat healthy.
Okay, so now I love that, and I totally agree. Um, and that's why I always try to do. I always tell everybody, make sure you do the hard shit first. Do the stuff that you don't like the first thing in the morning, so you can knock it out and go on with your day. But I wanted to talk. We were, as we were talking earlier before we came on, we had an amazing discussion, and I just want to say thank you. I appreciate it. But I listened to Hormozy's 2 books in a row, and then I went back to Gary Vaynerchuk's The Thank You Economy. And then I'm listening to not Dale Carnegie, and also Dale Carnegie, but I'm also listening to Mr. Kennedy, the No BS. And over the years, marketing has still been the same. It's changes, but it's still the same. And for me, I think there's a reason why that they put the ASPCA commercials on Christmas, because it's going to make you cry. It's going to make you pull out your wallet. It's going to make you spend money because you get emotionally involved. And I think for me, if you want me to buy something, get me emotionally involved. I'm an emotional guy. If you tell me this has this feature, I don't really care. But if it has something to do with my wife and my kids, then I'm involved. I'm all in. Here's my credit card. And I think a lot of people don't even really know about the hero's journey. And I want to talk about that because I know you're great at that. And I know that you teach people that if you want somebody to buy something, they need to become emotionally involved in whatever you're doing. So talk about that.
For sure, for sure. There was a really good sales manager that's a part of my team, and just a very naturally intuitive salesperson, closer, who just understands how people work. And he explained to me that there's really 2 types of buyers in this world, one that are more emotionally driven and the ones that are more technically driven. And usually, like, as you go up in the ladder of pricing on your offers, you get into more of the technical stuff where,
Mhm.
for example, we're selling services for tens of thousands of dollars. And so somebody isn't really going to pull the trigger on that just purely based off of emotion, because there's multiple layers of decision makers, there's board of directors. But as you go down in the pricing of offers, like if you're in a $50 product based business, $100 product based business, that's practically like all emotional buyers. And so you have to understand that with the marketing and the sales tactics that you use. In terms of what we do specifically with like PR, it's the aspect of building people's brands. And the difference between direct advertising and branding is direct advertising builds short-term revenue, short-term money, and branding creates long-term enterprise value that stays with the business forever and helps increase the ROI of your direct advertising immensely because your brand is more powerful and people are able to trust you more easily. And so we try and make people's digital brands look like the best possible version of themselves so that the trust barrier is never a question when people get onto a phone call, go onto somebody's website, where usually the trust barrier is the thing that gets people over the line. So like the emotions can bring people in, and then the trust is what will get them to pull the trigger. Because if you look at the statistics, it's crazy. It's like over 80% of buyers search up companies on Google before making a purchasing decision.
Yeah. Mm.
The average
Okay.
person needs the average person needs 7 touch points of marketing before they'll make a purchasing decision. Like all of these things, it's like you need to have a brand established there, because if you're running direct ads on Facebook and they click on your Facebook page or your Instagram page and there's very little there, or it's not a good representation of your company, then they're not going to buy simply on that, even if you drew them in from the ad.
And I love that, and I totally agree. But something, as you see, I'm writing stuff down. I'm scratching off like an animal. One thing is talking about trust. Like for me, I can tell you I'm the greatest podcaster ever. But when somebody like David Meltzer, somebody like John Lee Dumas, somebody like Dean Graziosi says, this guy is the real deal, listen to him. It's a lot more credible from them saying it, from me saying it. That's why a lot of people say, they'll ask me questions about myself, and I'm like, I don't like talking about myself, and they'll be like, why? I said because heroes talk about themselves, but legends get talked about. So I'd rather have somebody talk about me than me bragging on myself. So talk about that because I see a lot of people, especially on Google, because you mentioned Google. A lot of people on Google or on podcasts like our podcast. I think we have almost 700 written 5-star reviews.
That's
Or
amazing.
if you
That's
go on
powerful.
Google, if you go on Google and you see a company, they've been in business 10 years, but have no reviews. Because I was never a review guy until I started a podcast. I won't even go to a restaurant until I look at the reviews. And we all know that you got to eliminate the top half and then the bottom half, and then the real meat is in the middle. So talk about, getting people to, follow your business, leave reviews and comments, because that's worth so much money. And it's a lot of it is free, right?
A lot of it is free if you have a good product or a good service and you ask. And that's where a lot of it comes down to is that you can get so intermingled in the marketing side of things and the different like minute tactics and the micro side of things. But at the end of the day, if you have an unbelievable product and service, and this is what Alex Hermosi says all the time, if you have an unbelievable product or service and you sell it to a small batch of people, that's your perfect client avatar. They they will refer people to your business if you just simply ask. And then potentially you can add incentives to there. And then when you refer those people will create more referrals and more referrals. And then if you pump more marketing and more branding onto it, then it just explodes. And you become an overnight 100 millionaire. And like that's kind of the direction that we're going in, that where we've been honing in really on our service and our client avatar. So we know the exact type of person that we're trying to produce services for, which is like people who are working towards an IPO exit or capital raise, because we know they get the most value from building up their brand. And then we work specifically just with that client avatar and we dial in our services for that.
So, and I love that, but a lot of people, for me, I would rather under promise and over deliver every time. And that's something I learned from my friend Steve D. Sims. His son was just on the show last week, and we talked about that. Where, even though we're in a techie world, people still like to get thank you cards. People still like to get handwritten notes. I was on my friend Eric Allen's show. He sent me something. I was on my friend Dennis Yu was on my show. He actually sent me socks with my picture on it.
That's
And
cool.
every time I open up my drawer, I always think about it, about him. So talk about, because I think in today's PR world, it's old school versus new school. So I think if you put those together, you can't help but be successful. Like for me, it's all about building relationships. And now that me and you are friends, I want to build a generational relationship. So talk about, building relationships on and off social media.
Yeah, it's a complex topic because for us personally, we focus 100% digitally with all of our marketing efforts. But there is something to say about like the physical and the more traditional side of things that has extreme validity and is actually like very important in some cases. An example of this is we get in a ton of our leads for our client avatar of people we do services for through Facebook and Instagram ads. And we were getting in so many leads that weren't booking appointments and weren't answering our calls. And so we just spent like hundreds of dollars on each of these leads that are super high quality, perfect client avatar, but we just haven't been able to get in touch with them. Like they didn't read our text messages, they didn't pick up the phone, and then they didn't book a call. So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, how could we potentially get in touch with them with the information that we have? And so we sent them handwritten cards where you can use softwares where you can write in the handwritten card their address and it'll send it directly to them. And it was a test that we did, and it was actually it was super interesting to try out the old style of marketing with our like new marketing side of the business. But I think that we're headed in a direction where the new marketing side of things, your Google presence, your social media presence, your digital brand is the most powerful thing. Like when you go into a conference anymore, for myself, a physical conference, most people exchange like their Instagram pages or their LinkedIn pages before they give a person a business card. And that's very interesting because that's your representation of your brand. If somebody goes to your Instagram page and it doesn't at least match the level of output that you're doing in the real world, then there's a disconnect there.
Now, okay, now say if you go to a conference, say if me and you were at a conference and the month before you were on my show and I sent you a Winnipeg Jets jersey and you know I'm going to be at that conference, who is going to be the first person you're going to go look for?
Yeah, that's so true. Uh-huh.
You know, because I think, for me, it's kind of like we can be in business, but like when I found out you're gonna be on my show, I started following you on all your social media. I started liking your pages. I started leaving comments, not because I want something, but because I want to be in your ecosystem. And I think sometimes when you're a small company, that's one of the best ways to grow because if Tony Robbins keeps seeing Richard Kaufman popping up in his feed, he eventually is going to be like, wait a minute, who's this dude? Why is he always popping up? Why is he always sharing my stuff? You know, so I think that would be a great way to start off if you're not don't have a lot of money to start off. So what are some of the best ways to, start off a small business? Is that something that would help people?
Yeah, like what you're saying is amazing. Like you have such a genuine personality, Richard, and which like shows, and it's like that genuine care that people love, and people want to build relationships off of that. And so easily we live in a world that's so transactionally based, and so people get triggered very easily that they're just within a sales transaction. They feel that way, and so they cut off like the relationship component side of things. Because if you look deep down at yourself, you reached out to that company just as a transaction and nothing relationship based and nothing actually truly giving value to that company. You just wanted their money. And so it's an interesting topic with that. I think that people who are just trying to get into business, like they haven't started up a business yet, I think the most valuable thing that they can do is giving away their services for absolutely free and seeing if it's actually an interest in the marketplace first beforehand. And then when they give it away for free, they'll get honest feedback from the person that they're giving it away for free to. And then they'll be able to test and reiterate on that and then be able to come to the marketplace with an offer that's already been tested that they can start selling rather than testing it to a paid client and it not working. And you have to spend an extreme amount of time looking for and selling that paid client.
Okay, something I want to talk about, because I find it's now that we've seen a little bit of success. I see all the people, they get in touch with me, especially on LinkedIn. Oh my God, it's crazy on LinkedIn. Well, we're going to help you get 30,000 listeners and 30,000 downloads, but they're not real people. They're
Mhm.
they're people that are buying followers, but there's no engagement. I'd rather have 10,000 people following me that are engaged than 10 million people that are following me and if I put out a post, it's crickets. So talk to us about that, and what is the now of PR? Because I think it's the day before Thanksgiving. And by the way, brother, I'm so thankful that we finally got a chance to hang out. So talk about that. Is what is it like today in the PR, and how can we tell the difference between the fake million people followers and the real?
Yeah, the concept about followers is very interesting because it's changed over time, and we're at a place now where followers across pretty much every single social media platform literally doesn't matter, no matter how many followers that you have. And it's actually it's a good thing in reality, because what it means is that every single social media platform is favoring the content, where it's seeing the content that you're posting and seeing the original batch of people it's going out to, and if they engage with that content. And it's not necessarily based off of your following at all on all major platforms. TikTok was the initiator of this, where TikTok has practically always been nothing based off of your followers. You could have hundreds of thousands of followers, and if you weren't putting out good content, then it would get 0 views. That's why we use TikTok so heavily over the past years to test and reiterate on content, because you can post as much content as possible on TikTok, and if it goes viral and does extremely well on TikTok, then it'll do extremely well on practically every single other social media platform. And so we're going in a direction where you need to be creating extremely authentic and as well put together produced content as possible, something that's very unique to yourself, and where you're speaking about topics that you're genuinely an expert and knowledgeable in. I liked right before this podcast, you asked me the question of if I was to do a TED Talks and speak for 18 minutes, what topic would I speak on? Because that's very important, is that people should really only be speaking and trying to give knowledge around the areas that they're experts in. And that's the content that's going to do the best, because then you're actually able to give the most value possible.
Now, I'm a big Gary V guy. Gary V, because we actually got together one day, had lunch, and he actually started this whole podcast, the comeback coach. He started for the book and all that. But something that he said when he first started Wine Library, that if he put a post out and 80 people commented, 80 people were getting responses. And I see it all the time now, because I mean, I'm still a small player on Facebook. I mean, I think like this month, I think we've only had like 100,000 interactions or whatever. But if somebody
That's
leaves
pretty
a
good.
comment, I'm going to make sure that I reply. And even if it's just, hey, thank you, thank you for being a top contributor, or like I'll send a gift to my top contributor, just saying thank you, or I'll message them, hey, thank you for checking out my message, and I appreciate you. So I think I see a lot of people not being social on social
Mhm.
media, and I think
Mm.
that, I mean, because I think if Facebook sees, okay, he had 80 comments, now there's 160 comments, let's kick it up in the algorithm, because people start interested in what this guy's talking about or girl's talking about. So talk about that a little bit too. Just don't put a post out there and then you got all these comments and you're not replying to them, because eventually people are not going to reply anymore.
Yeah, for sure. That's what you said, where we're not treating social media like being social anymore. And that is the dynamic at play right now, where I think social media is drawing people farther apart from reality, even though it's supposed to bring us closer together into our real life. Most people are showcasing, and I fall, fall trapped to this as well, where showcasing this idyllic life and this falsified life that's not reality, where people are getting like this false perception. And going back to the comment side of things, because it's actually amazing. I had a friend tell me this, of basically the ultimate Facebook ads and TikTok hack ever for direct ads. And I implement this inside of our business where when you run a Facebook ad or a TikTok ad, you're able to see the preview link of that ad, or you're at least able to see it in your notification section and set it into a group message with other people in it. And so you can have VAs and your team members on your team. Like we have 70 team members. And so I send in a group message with all 70 team members to get everybody to comment and interact with the people commenting on the direct Facebook ads and the direct TikTok ads, and having conversations with every single person on it. So it's doubling the amount of comments, but then it's also reinforcing and building that trust within the comment section of all of the direct ads. And it's crazy the performance that it does, where if people look through the comments, like if somebody's interested in a post, they'll look through the comments and see what people are saying. And so you want to be able to monitor and manage that comment section as much as possible.
And I agree. Like I said, and I've been at this 5 years, and I'm still a rookie. But every morning I get up at 6 o'clock. I start working 6:15, and the first 2 hours of my day are first thing I do is I go through my feed. I reply to everybody that's left a comment, a thank you, and then I go to the birthday section in Facebook, and I actually go through and leave a personal message to everybody whose birthday it is today, just saying, "Hey, happy birthday! I'm thinking about you today." And maybe 300 people. I think we have like 10,000 followers or whatever. But all of a sudden, if I message, if I message Luke, "Hey brother, happy birthday! Hope you and your family are having a great time. Go Jets." All of a sudden, 3 minutes later, you're in the top of the newsfeed. You're kicking up in the algorithm. And I'm not doing it for that reason, but a lot of people don't realize that Facebook set that up, and that's a hack that you can use. That if you use, the birthdays and actually leave comments through Messenger and also on their Facebook page, you're kicking right up in the algorithm. So your algorithm never gets old if you keep doing that. Have you noticed anything like that?
I haven't noticed specifically with that, but that's super cool. With it. That's amazing that you message all your followers the happy birthday. That's absolutely amazing of going over and above like that, because it's doing something that nobody else is doing, which is extremely beautiful, because you always want to be, living to your true self, and that's what you want to do, which is amazing. The things that we see that affect algorithms the most is the majority of social media platforms are primarily video based, and 60% of the performance of videos is based off of the hook. And so we spend the majority of our time with our clients on hook variations. And we'll spend the same amount of time crafting the hooks as we do crafting the entire rest of the video, the value that we're giving, the call to action, the problem that we're solving within the video, all of that. And we'll do it so much so where, like, when I film content individually, it's different when like I'm on a podcast, but when I film content one-on-one with the camera, I will film the entire video that's scripted, or potentially like just half scripted and just me flowing. And then I will go back and refilm about 5 different hooks for us to re-edit the exact same video with 5 different hooks, because we know that 60% of the performance of a video is based off of the hook. And then we'll repost that on all the channels. And then that's the biggest thing in terms of performance. And then the biggest thing over the long term in terms of performance is, just like in business, it's consistency. And people lack that with social media because they want that instant gratification, like they do with looking at content. They want that same instant gratification with posting and be able to attract a ton of followers. And it's just not that way. It's like a business where it compounds over time, and you just need to be consistent with it as much as possible.
And something I had one of the engineers from YouTube on last week, and something that he mentioned was that 85% of people that watch YouTube are watching it with the sounds off. So imagine how many people that are losing if they don't have captions on their videos. So talk about that a little bit, because a lot of people don't realize, hey, I may be at work, I'm watching a video, but if there's no caption, I'm swiping up.
Yep.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's massive. There's actually nuances with captions. You need to have captions on every single one of your videos, and the captions that you use should be branded towards your brand where it's consistent across every single video, because you want to program the people who are watching it to be remembering the style of your video, not just yourself, but the style of your video in correlation with your brand. So we use the same colors on our clients' videos and the same colors on our videos, same fonts throughout every single video. So there's consistency there. And then there's nuances with font titles where you can actually look at psychology and different ways in terms our brain operate of when we're looking at video content, where if the wording is right near your mouth, if it's over the nose or right underneath your mouth, when you're very zoomed in on your face in a particular like short form video, it's the easiest to read. Subtitles at the bottom of the video aren't as easy to read, and especially you have to get nuanced with where you're creating content specifically for each platform natively, because IGTV videos, well, IG Reels now, show up differently than TikTok videos and show up differently than YouTube. And you have to make sure that your captions aren't getting cut off by the bottom and top sections and are showing in the feed, because like when people are just like scrolling past and their attention spans are next to nothing, is that you need to be capturing them with the first words, where the first words are your hook when there's no volume on. And so you have to make sure your first words that are on the video are just as enticing as the time that you spent on the hooks of the video on the video format.
Okay, so the last couple of minutes, I just want to talk about something that the whole world's talking about is AI, obviously. Because a lot of people say, you know what, Rich, I want to do everything, but I can't afford an assistant. And I tell them Chat GPT-4 is $20 a month. And now with it, you're able to create videos. I mean, audio, you're able to create graphics. It's able to search the internet to help you with best hashtags, with best descriptions. So if you can't afford it, an assistant, that's a good place to start, even though you got to be really careful. So talk about, how AI is coming out and helping. Like, I know that when we do our interview, and this is a hack for all you podcasters, what I actually do is I listen to every interview. I actually write out everything I think is important, and then I put it into Chat GPT-4. So it doesn't make it sound like a fourth grader wrote it. But I did all the work. So I'm using it as an assistant. I'm not using it as a crutch. So talk about, AI and how it's helping, but a lot of people are starting to use it as a crutch, because I'm seeing it a lot now. We know, like, if you guys know, I'm a ninth grade dropout. If you start seeing me using 10 syllable words, it's not me. It's bullshit and it's AI. So talk about that, how AI is affecting PR right now.
For sure. AI is the future and it's inevitable. And the younger generation is easier to adapt to it and accept it, because we've had such a extremely growth of technology during our lifetimes compared to the older generation, where they're definitely harder to adapt to new technologies because just because it doesn't come naturally to them as much as it does to like the Gen Z and even somewhat like millennials. And this is something I dealt with bringing AI into our team, where I don't believe is really meant to, it will replace jobs. I don't think it's going to replace an extreme amount of jobs. I think it's meant to make people's jobs more efficient. And I think people should be able to utilize it to their benefit. And what it really does is you have to get people into a prompt-based, question-based framework, where you're getting people into a question-based mindset instead of like a task-oriented mindset when they're using things like ChatGPT, which is very difficult for people who have never been taught how to ask the right questions. And I think that this is actually the next generation of people that are going to use AI, build extremely uh, exponential businesses with AI, is being able to utilize it because they're able to ask all the right questions. You basically have a person at your fingertips that is a little bit out of touch in terms of like the intricacies of society and the intricacies of emotion, but is the smartest person in the world because the AI is connected to the internet now. ChatGPT is connected to the internet. And so the things that we use ChatGPT for and AI is we use it for the similar things as you, Richard, where the things where we're doing the majority of the work and we're getting ChatGPT to finish it. So an example is we'll get on sales calls and we'll get Otter AI to transcribe the entire sales call. And then after the transcribed sales call finishes, we'll get a VA to upload that transcription to ChatGPT to create a summary of the call with key takeaways, things that could be improved from the salesperson that our sales manager is able to easily review. And then we're able to also create a synopsis, which is basically like the starting version, the starting draft of a pitch deck that we put together for the client. So we're making it extremely efficient of all of those things because the work has already been done on the closer call where they're taking all of that information from the internet, but also from the transcription of the call. And so I think people should definitely find ways to integrate it at the beginning. An assistant, I think when people are just starting a business, an assistant is definitely not the first thing you need. Like you need to be hiring out like a cleaner. You need to be hiring out like a nanny. You need to be hiring out your first employee who's taking over like some of your lower level tasks, who might be like a half of assistant, but I still don't even have an assistant. I hired a couple of assistants and they didn't really work out, but they're extremely difficult to get it right, and be your like right hand person.
All right. So the last thing I'm going to say about AI is, for me, like you said, it's all about the prompts. Like I'll write, you know, whatever it is, and I'll say, and I don't, I just do it. I say please. I say please write me an inspirational post, and I'll put the information in, and then I'll say in my voice, because it does learn your voice. It does learn your speech patterns. It learns your writing patterns, and then in the end, I say thank you. And it's amazing what it pops out because it starts to really notice the words that I use, the words that you input. So I think your inputs are way more important to get a good output, right?
100%. Yeah. We have different frameworks for different questions that you ask ChatGPT, but one basic framework is that you start with training ChatGPT. So you start with a couple of sentences about who ChatGPT is. So you start with the prompt saying, "You are a legal expert who's trained with all of the legal laws and in the U.S. and are a top level attorney." And so then you just train ChatGPT of who it is. And then you are asking what you want it to be. And then you're giving complete context around it. And it's actually really interesting that I've been able to use ChatGPT very effectively because I learned how to communicate effectively with my team as I built up my team, where you're basically showcasing like the problem and you're giving an extreme amount of context around it, which is what you need to be able to do with ChatGPT, where you can't simply just ask it a question. Like you need to give context around it.
And I love it. So this is a teaching podcast. So the last question I'm going to ask you, well, last two questions is, if you'd go back to your first day in business, what would be if somebody, like, say if Joe Snuffy's getting out of the military today, he's 45, got 3 kids, a beautiful wife, wants to start a business, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for if they were going to start a business November 22nd, 2023?
I would I'd make sure to test my product or service in the marketplace before scaling it up. So if you're going into a product-based business, making sure that you don't over purchase of inventory of something that hasn't been tested in the marketplace. Start with a small sample size and then work your way up. Same with the service-based business, like I said, of starting with selling your services for free and then starting to sell them and then scaling it up from that with a good product or a good service as the forefront. And I made that mistake and it led to hundreds of thousands of dollars of errors by not testing products in the marketplace before selling it. Another one is, this was for me personally, when I look back on it, is not being greedy. And it's one of the 7 deadly sins. And I deserved everything that came from me for being greedy. And I still feel greed in me in certain aspects of things that I try and deal with. But I think it's very easy that once you get to a certain level of success that you can get greedy around things. Where we were running a very successful business and we were getting around to Q4, which is the time that most product-based businesses make 50% of their revenue for the year. And so we over projected on inventory that we were going to sell in the hopes of like having a huge sale and not selling out, because we were getting greedy. We wanted to capitalize on the maximum amount of money instead of looking at the downside. And we didn't sell even close to our targets, had a ton of warehouse costs, ton of extra expenditures that we weren't expecting. And it went completely downhill from there. And it all was rooted in greed. And then the next one, the third one, is making sure you're self-evaluating yourself, especially if you're starting later in life, of your tolerance for risk. Like the difference between a person who is working inside of a job and a person who's willing to be a business owner and go through all of the resilience and grit that's needed to get through all of those tough times, is the tolerance that you have for risk. And so you need to, especially if you're older, you need to self-evaluate yourself in terms of like, do I have a history of being able to tolerate an extreme amount of risk? Because if you can't, then you probably shouldn't go into business, especially later in life, because I think it would just lead to you leaving your career, starting up a business, potentially failing, and then going back to your career and potentially being unhappy, where the right move might be just to switch career paths or switch jobs because maybe you're not being treated the way that you should be.
I love it. And I just want to put out something. Something just came to my mind before we go. If you're 55 years old, or 50 years old, the average American male lives to 78 years old. So you might only have 25 years left. Fuck it. Go for it. Enjoy it, because we all, like you said earlier, we all got an end date. So it might as well have some fun, hustle and grind, and go for it. Because they say that the poorest place in the world is a cemetery, because that's where all dreams went to die. So, guys, if you are older and you want to start a side hustle, start a business, write a book, start a podcast, do it. As long as you can financially do it and you're not hurting the family, go for it. So, Luke, let me ask you, last question is, how do we find you? How do we support your mission? And if we want to actually get you to do our PR so we can do the things that we're good at, how do we find you?
Yeah, I appreciate this so much, Richard. You really do an amazing podcast, and I appreciate anybody who is listening. If you want to hear more in terms of stuff that I'm doing, my YouTube channel, I started posting a decent amount of content. I'm starting to post weekly, specifically about leveling up in business, and mainly for younger entrepreneurs and people who might be lost in high school and university. I really want to help build the next generation of men. And so that's on my YouTube channel at Luke Lintz _. And then my Instagram page is probably the best way to contact me if you're wanting to reach out, which is just at Luke Lintz on Instagram.
Well, I want you to know that if your numbers have gone up over the last couple of days, I take full responsibility, because I've been binge watching all your videos on YouTube. I mean, on Instagram. So I just want to let you know, if your numbers are going up, it's all me.
Dude, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right, Luke, brother, I love you. And guys, as you see, my T-shirt says "Today I Decide." Guys, as you know, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy. I don't care if you like him. I like him. So, but he also talks about today it's our decision to be a victim or to be the victor. So you guys are watching this show, so obviously you're victors, and I love you guys. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel. Make sure you check out Luke's Instagram. It's fire. I loved him. Luke, brother, thank you so much for hanging out.
Thank you, Richard. Thanks, everyone.
All right, guys, I love you. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Make sure you get fat and bloated and enjoy yourself, and just enjoy it. Enjoy your families. Kiss your loved ones. Make sure that they know they're loved and appreciated, because tomorrow is not guaranteed. Remember, guys, vertical momentum, the only way to go is up. And I will see you next week. Love you guys.